إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. Just to recap from where we took off the last time, if you can remember, we ended off with happiness is equal to awareness of God and self-awareness and social awareness. Now when we look at awareness of Allah and managing our relationship with Allah, that still involves us managing ourselves. And when we look at being socially aware and social management, it still involves social self-management. So if we want to simplify it, then we would say that happiness is equal to self-awareness and self-management, the way we handle ourselves. And so this brings us to where we begin today, the importance of knowing ourselves, or the importance of knowing yourself. And what I wanted to do is start with a classical look to see whether our classical scholars felt that knowing ourselves is part of or important for us to embark on this journey. And we're going to start with one of the great spiritual leaders of this ummah, Imam Ghazali, and hear what he's got to say on happiness and knowing yourself.
The alchemy of happiness is a guide to transform the essence of man from his baseness to the purity of the angelic state. This transformation is through increasing knowledge of God. However, before you can begin to know God, first you must know yourself. Knowing yourself starts with an understanding of the human being's two distinct components, the body and the heart, or more specifically, the spiritual heart. There are 5 steps to understand the heart. First, you must recognize its existence. Next, know that the heart works to seek happiness through knowledge of God. It acquires this knowledge through knowledge of God's creation. Next, know that the body is a kingdom, and within it, the limbs and organs are its workers. Appetite is the tax collector. Anger is the policeman. Intellect is the chief minister. And the heart is king. The body is in a constant spiritual struggle between being held captive by anger and appetite and using them as a mount and weapon to attain spiritual fulfillment. If the heart acts at the advice of the intellect and keeps anger and appetite under control, the path to happiness will be made accessible. But if the intellect becomes the prisoner of anger and appetite, the kingdom will become desolate and the heart will be destroyed. Know that appetite and anger were created to nourish and protect the body and are its servants. The body was built to bear the senses, and it is their servant. The senses were created for intelligence gathering and serve the intellect. The intellect was created as the lamp of the heart. Through its light, the heart may see the divine presence. Thus, the intellect is the servant of the heart. The heart was created to witness the beauty of the divine presence and is its servant.
Okay, so when we're looking at what we're looking at, the first thing, as we can see in line with what Imam Ghazali says, is to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in order to do that, we have to know ourselves. Because knowing oneself is the key to happiness. It's the key to knowing Allah and then the key to happiness. Also, we must understand that the body is made up of two distinct parts, the body and the soul. And this is supposed to be one talk, but the information was too extensive, so now it's split into two. And today we're going to discuss only the body. And inshallah, if we can quickly do the second part, while everyone still remembers what we've spoken about, we'll discuss the spiritual heart. Now, what we've learned so far is that actions that generate positive emotions benefit us physiologically. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, In ahsantum ahsantum li anfusikum, that if you behave beautifully, you do it for your own benefit. Wa in asatum falaha. And if you behave negatively or badly, it's against yourself. So we learned that the consequences of our thoughts, speech, and actions affect us and those around us. So today what we're going to focus on is basically how this affects the biology of the body. If we understand this, this can serve as a foundation for future lessons. And primarily we're going to be looking at parts of a speech from a cellular biologist called Dr. Bruce Lipton. And you'll see he's got some profound understandings, and you'll wonder why someone like this is not a Muslim. But we must remember that guidance is in the hands of Allah. And scientists are always looking at things only in the physical, so they look at the heart and they look at the body, but they never take it one step further to the soul, which is actually the seat of intellect and understanding. So we're going to look at a small experiment that he does. Basically what he does is he takes a human cell. And the thing about the human cell is that under the right conditions, it will multiply naturally. And this is basically what he's doing is he's putting a cell into a dish and he's going to see the effects on the environment and on the dish. And while we watch all these videos, I want you to just keep in mind that this is actually how our bodies work. So all the references he's making to what affects the cells, this is all relevant to all of us.
What I do is put one stem cell in a petri dish by itself, and it would divide every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's one cell, then there's two, then there's 4, 8, 16, 32, and after a week I have 50,000 cells in the petri dish, but guess what? They're all genetically identical because they came from the same parent cell. I have 50,000 genetically identical cells. That's not the experiment. This is the experiment. Cells are like fish. They live in a fluid. And I have to make the aquarium fluid when I take cells out of the body and put it in a plastic petri dish. We call that fluid culture medium. And our best effort is to try to match the fluid inside the body that the cells are normally growing in so that they could find a happy environment. So here's what I do. I take my 50,000 cells, I split them into 3 different petri dishes. So I have 3 dishes with genetically identical cells in it. But here's what I do. I change the environment, the culture medium. I just change some of the composition of that culture medium a little bit. And guess what happens? In dish A, in environment A, the cells form muscle. I go, that's great, that's fun. I say, yeah, but in dish B, with a different environment, the cells form bone. I go, wait. In dish C, with yet a different environment, the cells form fat cells. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't even have to be a cell biologist to answer this of the most profound question of all. What controls the fate of the cells? It's the environment. And this is so profound for a very simple reason. I take my dish of healthy cells, and I take it from a healthy environment, and I move it into a bad environment. What do you think happens? The cells get sick. They start to die. If I had a physician who studied cells and could actually do a home visit and came to look at my cells at home and look at my dish, and they go, oh, Bruce, your cells look kind of sick in that dish. I wonder what kind of medicine I should give them. And I say, no, Don't give them any medicine. You want to make the cells well? No medicine. Take the dish from the bad environment, move it to the good environment, and they instantly get well. The cells are a complement to the environment. And so the concept is this: if you're sick, it's a symptom to let you know you're not living in harmony in the world in which you're in.
So basically what we're looking now is that controlling one's environment is the key to well-being. One controls the inner environment of the body by controlling what they expose themselves to, or expose their cells to, and the cells in turn are controlled by the external environment and what we expose ourselves to. And then the body will produce the chemistry that responds to the stimuli that we've been exposed to. And now we're just going to look at the mechanism by which the environment affects the cells in our body. This lecture's got quite a bit of videos because I wanted you to look at or get the information from the sources themselves, because I think it's more effective. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think this may stay longer in our minds, inshallah.
How does the environment control the genetics? So a long time ago, I was making a study of the cells, and I say, well, what am I doing? I'm adding signals, chemistry, let's say, into the Petri dish. The signals rain down upon the cells. Some of the signals attach to the cell membrane, the skin of the cell. I say, then what happens? The signal from the skin is sent inside the cell, and that signal is used to control the proteins which create behavior. That signal is used to control the chromosomes where heredity is. So I can activate behavior with environmental signals, or I can go in and activate the genes. Well, I was studying this 1975, 1980. Now there's new science. The new science is not focusing on the genes, it's focusing on the signal. The new science is actually called signal transduction. And what does that mean? It just means, how do you translate a signal into biology? Where and how is this occurring? And part of signal transduction is, how do the signals from the environment go in and affect the genetics? Well, it's a subdivision of signal transduction. It's called epigenetics. Epigenetics is the most profound, revolutionary science on this planet for a very simple reason. The old science was called genetic control. What does that mean? Control by genes. I go, well, that's really cool. I say, what about epigenetic control? Sounds like the same thing. It's like, it's so different. It's amazing. Why? Epi means above. When I say, what's the word for skin? It's called epidermis. Why? Because just underneath the skin is a layer called the dermis. So epidermis means the layer above the dermis, the skin. So now I say, what does epigenetic control mean? And the answer is simple. Control above the genes. And all of a sudden we started to realize, wait a minute, the genes are not in control. No, they never were in control. That was our belief system. It's epigenetic control. I said, well, how does the signal from the environment actually do this? I said, well, we go look at the skin of the cell, because that's where the information is being processed. The skin of the cell membrane, is an information processor. And the significance about this, just so we can take a big jump, is while you see yourself as this unique individual with all your human functions, respiration, digestion, excretion, muscle contraction, endocrine system, reproductive system, nervous system, immune system, guess what? Virtually every cell in your body has every one of those functions. Why? Where the heck do you think you got your functions from? You're made out of 50 trillion cells. The relevance of all this is that you are a community. And I say, well, what's significant? I say, your mind. Your mind is a government. Your mind is a government that determines the fate of the cells in your community.
So the message that's beginning to unfold for us is that what we expose ourselves to affects our psychology and thus our existence. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. And don't follow that over which you have no knowledge. إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. That indeed your hearing and your sight and your heart, all of these things are going to be questioned. In other words, every single thing we expose ourselves to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to question us about it, because these things have an effect on us.
How does it work? Well, the cell membrane is the skin of the cell, is the brain of the cell. And I just said to you a little while ago, cells are miniature people. I go, yeah, they are. And I said, they're just like you. And then you're going to say, you mean my brain come from my skin? I go, absolutely. If you understand embryology, when an embryo is formed, there are 3 layers. They're called ectoderm, outer layer, mesoderm, middle layer, and endoderm. And each layer gives rise to specific organs and tissues. Guess what? The outer layer, called the ectoderm, only gives rise to 2 things in the human: skin and nervous system. Your nervous system is coming from the skin for a very simple reason. The skin is the interface between the outside and the inside. What better place to read about the 2 environments? So we understand, and I say, well, how does this membrane work? I say, there are switches, like light switches, built into the membrane. And the significance of these switches, as you can see in this picture of a cartoon of the surface of the cell, they're called receptors on the skin of the cell. Do you have receptors? Think about it. Do you have any receptors? Come on. Eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch, pain, pressure, temperature. Where do you think your receptors are found? In your skin. You and the cells are exactly the same in this regard. So the receptor has a sugar antenna, which is reading the environment just like television antennas, reading signals and what's going on, and a protein that takes that signal and carries it inside the cell. I said, well, what does it look like, this receptor switch? Well, this is a little piece of the membrane I cut out. And I show you here is a switch, a light switch. It has 2 parts to it. The receptor, which has the antenna reading the environment, and the effector, which is a protein that takes that signal and sends it inside the cell to control it. The receptor is stimulus. The effector is response. Stimulus, response. The cell's response is due to the stimuli. Where do the stimuli come from? The environment. Function, I just want to say, I should have added that. This is not, I show you one switch. There are 100,000 receptors on the surface, so a cell is responding to 100,000 pieces of information coming in every second. I say, function of the receptor, awareness of the environment. Yeah, eyes, ears, nose, let me know what's going on in the environment. I say, yeah, but what's the function of the effector? Oh, that's the one that sends the physical signal inside the cell to control the function. So if I define the switch in a different way, I would say a switch represents awareness of the environment through a physical sensation. You go, well, that's better than integral membrane protein complex, blah, blah, blah. I say, but I can shorten it even better. Because there's a word, a single word in the dictionary that defines that switch. I said, what's that word? Perception. Perception. Awareness of the elements of the environment through physical sensation. And all of a sudden I say, what is the name of the switch that controls your biology? Perception. Why is that relevant? Because you have perception. And you can change your perception. And as you change your perception, you change the function of the switches. You control your biology by the way you see the world. And it goes through perception. And it's so wonderful because not all your perceptions are accurate. Yet your perceptions still control your biology. Whether they're accurate or they're false, they still control your biology. So a simple way of saying, what's the name of the switch? It's belief. What do you believe? Because whatever your belief is, it's going to activate that switch. You have a positive belief, you're going to get a much different activation than if you have a negative belief.
So subhanallah, when you look at this, what they're actually saying, that belief controls your biology. Imagine that. And so if we understand this, that means the most important requirement for good chemistry is a belief system that clearly navigates one through the complexities of the body. And why I say the complexities of the body is because when you look at the human body, as he said, there's 50 to 100 trillion cells. Each of the cells are carrying out 100,000 chemical reactions each second. And then your body is still communicating via electrical signals, electromechanical signals, pressure in the veins, and all this is impossible for a human being to control unless he has some system from the designer of this body which will cause him to behave in such a way that ensures the health and the stability of the system. And so as we see in biology, or belief controls biology, and biology is basically our health. So in other words, belief system is something that gives us life. And let's look at this verse in the Quran, which should have new meaning for us after today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu stajibu lillahi wa lirasul. O you who believe, respond to Allah and His Messenger, meaning obey them. When? إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. If they call you to what gives you life. Look at the beauty of this verse, that Allah is saying that we should have this belief system to follow Allah and His Messenger, the kalima, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and this is what gives us life. And now the Quran takes on a new meaning. And the thing we have to understand about this book, this Quran, is a book that has come from the future to lead us from the past into the future. Often Muslims, when we look at our deen, we think we're out of tune with time. Science is advanced beyond this time. But you have to understand the Quran is coming from the future and it's layered with meanings. And as man advances, we peel off those meanings. And literally here, you can see this is 100% corresponding to science. And if we just finish the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. And know for certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moves between a man and his heart. وَأَنَّهُ إِلَيْهِ تُحْشَرُونَ. And indeed you are going to be returned to Him. Now, just to detract a little bit, let's look at this verse of the Quran. And this is just to point out the excellence of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadithi. Allah has revealed the most beautiful statement. Kitabun mutashabiha. A book with parts resembling each other. Mathaniya, oft repeated. Taqsha'iru minu juludul ladina yakhshawna rabbahum. The skin of those who fear their Lord shiver from it, from this book. Right? ثُمَّ تَلِينُ جُلُودُهُمْ وَقُلُوبُهُمْ إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. And then their hearts and their skins soften when they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what's amazing first of all is that the skin is sensing the dhikr, the tilawah, and the heart and the skin have the same response, which is again in line with what we just learned from the science. So this is again a scientific miracle of the Quran, or the excellence of the book. And just one other verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرْوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Indeed, those who disbelieve in our signs, سَوْفَ نُصْلِيهِمْ نَارًا. Indeed, we're going to burn them in the fire. كُلَّمَا نَضِجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا خَيْرًا. Every time the skin is burned through, we're going to replace it with another skin. And what's amazing about this is that science has discovered, and as we just see now in the video, that the pain receptors are on the skin. And Allah says each time the skin is roasted through, that means right down to the last layer, because what science has discovered is that when you get beneath the third layer of skin and you get to the muscle and tissue, then there's no more pain. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying as soon as it gets through, that's when He replaces it. And just to show, this is the man called Dr. Tagata Tagasoni from Thailand, who's a skin specialist. When he attended a conference in Riyadh, and they told him that this was narrated to a man who articulated this 1400 years ago, he said it's impossible for somebody to have known this before the 20th century. And subhanallah, he took his shahada. So now we're going to look at how this understanding should physically affect our health, and why this is so important for us to embrace this understanding, because it harbors physical benefits for us.
Dean Ornish takes a group of prostate cancer patients. He splits them into two groups. He says, one, you do the conventional medical treatment, all the pharmaceutical garbage, you do that. He said, the other group, no drugs, no medicine. Here's what I'm going to do. Just to ask you to change your diet. I'm going to ask you to learn stress reduction technique, and I'm going to teach you how to meditate. In 90 days, 500 genes change their function just by changing diet and understanding how to reduce stress. Because stress is the biggest cause of illness on this planet. It's been actually estimated that up to 90% of doctor visits are due to stress. And the relevance is, you can change your genes every day just by the way you're responding to the world. You are not a victim of the genes. You are the master of your genes. Your mind controls the genes. I go, well, great. I got this Petri dish. I got cells in it. And you say to me, Bruce, this is a real nice study. You did that in a plastic Petri dish, and it's so nice in a laboratory, but I'm a human. What the heck is the connection here? And I already told you what the connection was. I told you, guess what? While you see yourself as a single individual human, you are not a single individual human. You're a community of 50 trillion cells. And the significance about that 50 trillion cell community is this. You are a skin-covered Petri dish. And you've got 50 trillion cells inside. I say, yeah, but what are those cells going to do? And I say, well, the fate of the cell is controlled by the culture medium. I say, oh, what's the culture medium inside your body? I go, oh, the culture medium inside your body? What is it called? It's called blood. The blood is the culture medium inside your skin-covered Petri dish. Think of this and recognize this important fact. To a cell, it doesn't make a difference if it's in a plastic dish or a skin dish. The cell responds to the composition of the culture medium. Then I say, yeah, but my blood is the culture medium. I say, yeah, it's got a composition in it. What's it controlled by? Number one, nutrition. Thank God people around here are beginning to understand to get away from that mass-produced, industrial, pesticide-filled, polluted food and start eating all the organic food. Because this is what's feeding your cells. But more importantly, in addition to the nutrition, there are signals in there to tell cells what to do. Yeah, but where do these cellular signals come from? These signals that tell the cell to become this or become that, to be healthy or to be sick, where do the signals come from? And the answer is this. You read the environment. You read the world environment out here. You read the inside environment inside your body. I said, who reads the environment? Oh, I go, the nervous system perceives the environment. I perceive it's kind of warm and muggy in here, and it's affecting my sweat glands right now. And the fact is, if it was cold, I would change the response of my physiology. It's different when you go outside when it's warm. When you go outside, it's cold. Why does your physiology change? It read the perception of the environment. And I go, yeah, but is it just the perception? I go, nah, that's where the catch is. Because I said sometimes our perceptions are right and sometimes our perceptions are wrong. So all of a sudden it's not that the brain is directly controlling the chemistry of your body. It's your mind. It's your mind. You can change your mind and change your biology. Yes, this is what spontaneous remissions are all about. People who are terminally ill and everybody counts them out and all of a sudden they become healthy. How did they do that? They changed their mind. And when you change your mind, what is the result? The mind tells the brain what chemistry it should release. That chemistry goes into the culture medium, the blood, or that chemistry can be carried to the nervous system, to the cells, and those signals are the signals that control behavior and genetics. And all of a sudden it says, well, then you're not a victim of the genes at all. You're actually creating the culture environment that programs your cells. Significance. You're not a victim, you're a master. You're the one that can change your perception. You can change your mind. You can change the way you look at the world. And all of a sudden you start to get out of the fact that I'm a victim of forces outside of me. No, you're not. You're in charge.
Okay, so let's just look at the first important thing about the culture medium, that's blood. This is why cupping, for example, is so important in our tradition, because it removes the impurity from the blood. Just on a side note, you mentioned nutrition, and we can just relate it to the fasting to see how important that is for the body. But let's just look, the heart is responsible. The heart pumps blood to every single cell in the body. And it's constantly encoding information to every cell in the body. And remember in the last discussion, we said that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ala wa fi jasadi mudghah." He said, beware, in the body there's a piece of flesh. إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. If it is sound or if it's healthy, the whole body is healthy. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. And if it's corrupt or sick, then the whole body is sick. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. And this is the heart. And this is, we see, what science confirming that if you controlling the blood, whatever is controlling it is controlling the health of the body. The second important thing is that changing the way we look at things is essential for our physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. And now we just look at an instrument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, sabr, patience. And we see that patience is a powerful weapon. Why? Let's say you're driving on the road and some guy cuts you off. Your first impulse is to start doing all kinds of gymnastics on the road or using all kinds of flowery language. But what you don't realize is that at that point, you're starting to change the chemistry in your body. However, if at that point, you just sit back and say, Ya Allah, save me from this ignorance, or you just laugh it off and you respond with patience, you are maintaining the positive chemistry in your body. So patience now becomes a physical health benefit. And we should remember that the Prophet ﷺ says that patience is half of faith. As-sabr nisful iman. And we can see why, because it's beneficial for us. And we're learning from this that the mind, or we should say the spiritual heart, is actually in control. Now, if we just look at this verse, what it's basically saying, and we look at the previous video where it said that our biology is dependent on belief. Remember that video? And then in this one, it's saying that if we manage stress and we meditate and then we have good nutrition, this is the source for good health. Okay, so that's what it's saying. Belief, and then positive emotion or meditation, and then nourishing ourselves has an effect on our existence. And then we look at a verse in the Quran which we may overlook many times, and now we see the new significance it'll bring for us. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So automatically belief is in there. Kulu min at-tayyibati ma razaqnakum. Eat from the pure things we have provided for you. And this is now referring to nutrition. Washkuru Allah or washkuru lillah in kuntum iyyahu ta'budun. And be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if indeed it is Him who you worship. And when we look at shukr, first of all, it's a positive emotion. Second of all, if you just close your eyes and you think of all the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. Alhamdulillah, I have a house, so many people don't. I have a mode of transportation, so many people don't. I had a plate of food to eat today and so many don't. This in itself is an act of worship and it's generating positive emotion. And so we look, this one verse is containing the secret for our well-being. And this is the way we need to start looking at the Quran. The Quran is 6,236 ayat. It means 6,236 signs pointing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one is pointing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we just have to find the wisdom in it. Okay, because the wisdoms are there, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called them ayat. So what we have to do, we have to eat what is chemically pure and electromagnetically stable. This is very important. This is why we don't eat animals that are stunned, for example, because that disrupts the electrical stability of the animal. The other very important thing is that prayer and all good deeds must be preceded by consumption of what is pure. And this is, I find, very important, because in today's time, we find many of us that when we're praying and we're doing acts of obedience, then somehow we think that we can offset, some of the haram, especially when it comes to business. Dealing with banks, dealing with haram transactions like insurance or medical aid, those things are not haram. And if we want to partake of them, then we should make sure each day we're asking Allah to forgive us for being in it. Say, Ya Allah, I'm weak, forgive me for being in it. But never trivialize it, because the reality is, it is not acceptable. And we should never be of those who cover up the truth. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks even of the people that He forgives. He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا, except those who repent, وَأَصْلَحُوا, and then they rectify, وَبَيِّنُوا, and then they declare the truth. فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَتُوبُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Those are the ones that I turn to in repentance. And we should remember that the objective is divine light. As we've seen in the first video, that we are actually aiming to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no shortcuts. There is no way of bypassing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law, because as we've seen, this law is tied into the biology. You can't be trying to buy health by bypassing the very mechanisms that bring you health. So when we look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the messengers, these are the sinless creatures of Allah. Allah is saying, Ya ayyuha rusulu, kulu min at-tayyibat. He's saying, O messengers, first you eat what is pure, and then wa'amalu salihah, and then do good deeds. And this is a lesson for all of us, that the Sahaba were most concerned about what they put into their stomachs, and this is what the believers today have to go back into. We have to not separate between these two understandings. We must be cautious about what we put into our stomachs, and then we must work to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey Him. So what we're beginning to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being all connected and dependent on each other. These are not mutually exclusive. So a person can only be successful by excelling on the personal, the social, and I included the economic because the economic affects all the others, and spiritual spheres. And in fact, excelling in all of these spheres is the secret to happiness, and it's the objective of this deen. So we're just going to now look at how positive emotions affect the body.
I go, yeah, but where or how does it work? And I go, well, my friend Bob Mueller, who does the covers of my books, created this wonderful cartoon. Me as a cell biologist, but then I said, no, this is for you. You may not be a cell biologist, but we're all self-biologists. We create our own biology. And I say, well, how does it work? So look how simple this is. I say, you close your eyes, and when you open them up, there's someone you love in front of you. Your mind perceives love. And when you perceive love, you release chemistry into the blood, dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, growth hormone. They come out of the brain. They go into the culture medium. I said, what's the significance of that? I said, if I took those chemicals and put them into a plastic petri dish with cells, the cells will grow exuberantly well. And I said, no kidding. Isn't that funny how when you fall in love, you feel so good and you're so healthy? That's because you create a culture environment that nourishes and feeds cells. Love feeds cells. But I say in contrast, you open up your eyes and you see something that scares you. You don't release this chemistry. In fear, you release totally different kinds of chemistry. You release stress hormones and inflammatory agents. If I put those chemicals in the plastic petri dish, guess what happens? It stops the cells from growing. That's why fear causes stress, which causes illness. Why? When you're in stress, the chemistry is shutting down the growth of the body. You say, why would it do that? It's intelligent. It says this, if you're in stress and you're afraid, something's going to get you. So what does your body do? It says, listen, we may have to run like hell in a second. So I'll tell you what, conserve all the energy so if that lion is chasing us, we can get out of here. Well, how do you conserve energy? You shut off everything that's not necessary at the time of stress. Well, the significance about that is this system was designed a million years ago. A million years ago, what was our stress? That saber-toothed tiger. When that saber-toothed tiger chased us, damn well better be in stress, get that energy running, and get away from the lion. But guess what? When you get away from that saber-toothed tiger, no more stress. And all of a sudden, you go back into growth. And the significance is you cannot grow when you're in stress because the chemistry released into your blood shuts down the cells. And this is where the problem comes in today's world. They are feeding you fear. They're feeding you stress. And the consequence of that is you get sick. And you get sick, and then you feed the corporate medical people. You start to live in fear. And this is what we got to get rid of.
Okay, so what we now understand is that through our choices, we either self-improve or self-destruct. The mind is probably the most powerful processor known to humankind because it can easily create and slide into states of fear and anxiety. And this brings me to the next very important thing that affects us. You know, the audio-visual stimuli that we are exposed to these days. These are access points that feed information into our minds. And everyone knows here you can be on Facebook or WhatsApp and you're looking at all these disturbing images. And we need to start becoming conscious of how it affects us. People are on Instagram and all of a sudden it gives them stress because they're trying to impress other people. And what you don't realize, this is all negative chemistry. Television, for example. From today, you're watching a football match, and if you're a Manchester supporter, just see where if they're losing. Start monitoring your heart rate and see how you feel. If you're watching a movie which keeping you in suspense, what you don't realize, it's affecting the chemistry in your body. And what we need to do by becoming conscious of this, we can start to manage it. Okay? Speech is another important generator of positive or negative emotions. They did an assessment of Holocaust survivors, and they found that every time they spoke of their experiences in the Holocaust, their heartbeats exceeded 200 beats per minute. You know, so the blood pressure, exceeded 200. And they find a direct relationship between speech and the blood pressure in the body. So positive actions like charity and keeping good company, avoiding bad or negative speech, bad company, being grateful, being patient, having taqwa, forgiveness, all these create good chemicals in the body. And negative acts like ingratitude. If you're ungrateful, you're only affecting yourself. You may be complaining about somebody else, but you're actually harming yourself. Nagging, it's negative. Gossiping, negative. Being pessimistic, which becomes so easy in South Africa today. Pessimism is like a normal mode that we're in. What we don't realize, we're harming ourselves. And so let's look at another instrument, tawakkul. Tawakkul is such a beautiful instrument because you take your concerns and you hand it over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So simple. And then you return the positive state to your body. And sabr and shukr and taqwa and sadaqah, these are all for our benefit. But I just want to look at the tawakkul part and reflect on this verse in the Quran. Because last week I came back from China, and when I landed and I put my phone on and I looked at the news and views group, you know, some guy had posted pictures of people that were beheaded and all kind chopped up with all kinds of weaponry. And he said, South Africa, shame on you, this is what happened yesterday. And my first instinct when I just landed was to say, is this a country I should be living in? And then all of a sudden I said, but Ziad, you should be saying, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, not this. And you should realize from the quantum physics that every single thing is in the control of Allah. And immediately, alhamdulillah, I said, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, and then I was calm. And then somebody sent a message to say this guy was mistaken. This is something that happened a few years ago. But this is the effect it has on us. And so if you on some groups that are looking at this continuously, you have no idea how you're damaging your own health. But I want to look at this verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَخْشَوْهُمْ. That indeed, people said to them, indeed the people have gathered against you. Meaning they're coming, not maybe. The protesters are on their way to your house. Definitely. فَخْشَوْهُمْ, so fear them. What does Allah say that these people did? فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. They turned to Allah. وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. This was their response. And what's the outcome? Allah says, فَانْقَلَبُوا بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلِهِ. They returned with the ni'mas of Allah and His bounties. And then what happened? لَمْ يَمْسَسْهُمْ سُوءٌ. No harm touched them. Why? وَاتَّبَعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ. Because they followed the pleasure of Allah. Today, we bypass what Allah has decreed because we want to protect ourselves. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you follow what I am pleased with, I will protect you. and I will shower my mercy and blessings upon you. Why? Wallahu dhu fadlin azim, because Allah is the owner of bounty. Now let's look at the next part, because in this video we were talking about love and fear. And shaitan, the way he manipulates us is with fear. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ. This is shaitan, he threatens you with his allies. فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِي. Don't fear them, you fear me. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If indeed you are believers. So we are threatened with global warming and then with Donald Trump and all kinds of crazy things. And we occupy ourselves with these things, but we don't realize these are all tools of shaitan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. Shaitan, he threatens you with poverty. And now you can understand, if you submit to that, you become unstable. وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. And then he will command you to evil. وَاللَّهُ يَعِدُكُمْ مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْهُ. And Allah is calling you to forgiveness for him, وَفَضْلًا. And he's calling you to his bounty. So we should learn to hand things over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our responses, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Qaddarallahu wa ma sha'a fa'ala. These are the gifts that Allah has given us, and now we can see these are like medicine. You don't need chemical treatment. This is electrical treatment. It's articulation which bring about chemical effects in the body. And now we're going to come to what I hope is the most important part of this lesson, which I hope we're all going to internalize, and this is reference patterns. And basically, when we discussed the previous week, we said that the body has this autonomous nervous system, which is the automatic function of our bodies, and this controls all the major organs. And because it's automatic, we don't have any direct control over it. And how the brain functions, it creates patterns. It starts creating patterns for what we find normal and abnormal. And so if it's experiencing something, it classifies it normal, then it keeps us in a state of calmness. And if it sees something that's abnormal, for example, if a snake pops out to pop up here now, my body would have detected that as something new, and then I would jump up and run to the other side of the room. This is how reference patterns work. So the brain has got three main parts. It's got the neocortex, which is your thinking part, and then the middle part called the limbic system, or your emotional brain, and then your R-stem brain, which is responsible for instincts. So logic and thinking, emotion and pleasure in the middle, and then survival and fear in the back. Now, the brain is constantly like a supercomputer working out different patterns to try to work out what is normal and what is abnormal, and then it's constantly comparing whatever we're experiencing to these patterns. So I left these notes here just for anyone that goes back to the website, just so it gives you a better understanding. But we're going to go just to the summary. So these patterns are formed by repetition. Whatever we do often, that becomes your pattern. And then these patterns are updated by touch, by taste, by smell, by emotions, by instincts, and by the way we respond to things. And so your pattern can be either be in harmony or coherent, or it could be in disharmony. For example, someone is brought up in an abusive home. That becomes their normal pattern. And that is an unstable pattern. So you can have an unstable pattern as your normal. And then you are causing serious harm to your body. And then what happens with the patterns, the brain, it is looking at every new experience as an arousal. So an arousal is something that pops up for between 1 to 3 seconds. If you ignore it, it'll just disappear. And if it persists longer than 3 seconds, now your pattern has to factor it in. And just for the men, men, they always joke around, they say, the Prophet ﷺ says, you can only look at a woman once. So they say, make sure you look good the first time. But now you understand that you can't look for longer than 3 seconds. It's the maximum. Otherwise, it grabs your attention. So an example of an arousal becoming part of your pattern is that if you live in a city, for example, the noise becomes part of your pattern, and eventually you don't hear it anymore. And then you go for a holiday to the Drakensberg and you say, it's so quiet here. Or someone comes from the farm to the city and he says, how do you sleep here? Because it's disrupting his pattern. So there are thousands of things happening around us at any given time, and the way the brain deals with this is it shuts everything off and then it focuses attention on what it feels is biologically most important. So if the arousal persists, then we focus attention. So for example, if my phone rings and I just cut the call, I don't need to attend to it. But if I leave the phone to ring a long time, now it will demand my attention. And this is the same thing like with your WhatsApp. You know, people that have WhatsApp and that thing pings all the time. Ping, ping, all the time. If you learn to ignore it, it won't be part of your pattern. But if each time it pings and you pick it up, it becomes part of your pattern. And they say an average person has 83 cell phone contacts or 83 contacts with their phone a day. So imagine if each time, if it's for 2 minutes, how much of your time you're wasting a day with the phone. So arousal, if left to persist, will now shift to attention. Okay? And chemistry and attention and energy follow attention. Once something captures your attention, now the chemistry of the body and the energy of the body flows in that direction. So what we choose to focus our attention on will determine our hormonal response and our corresponding electrical activity, and this in turn will update our patterns. So something large, you know, you're sitting in your kitchen and something breaks. It grabs your attention, right? Or you hear emotion. So I'm sitting now and somebody suddenly says, yeah, do you know what, so-and-so said something about you. Now all of a sudden, 1 second ago I was calm. Now all of a sudden I heard what they got to say. Now all of a sudden my chemistry is, because I can say, well, I can tell you 10 things about that person. You know, or I could just say, well, so be it. Allah will deal with them and maintain my chemistry. So we can over-allocate energy and attention to trivial pursuits if we allow them to grab our attention. We must learn to not pursue things that are trivial and futile. Now, what the body does, each arousal is matched against a normal pattern. And if there's a match, there can be voluntary attention. So my WhatsApp beeps and my brain knows that every time that thing beeps, I pick it up and I look at my phone, that's voluntary attention. If I see a mouse running here past and I jump up, that's involuntary attention. The arousal, that's what it will catch. Okay? But the most effective tool that we need to learn is voluntary activation to involuntary stimuli. That means something new is happening and I become aware of my pattern and then I change my response consciously. This is the way we change any habit that we want. You know, I give you a simple example. The doctor told me I'm anemic and I can't have tea after I have supper or anything with caffeine. And so what I did was I started drinking a rooibos tea. And it didn't taste good for a while, but after a few weeks, I was comfortable with it. And my grandson that always has tea with me, when he tasted it the first time, he refused to drink it. But now he loves it. And this is the way patterns, and this is what is called voluntary activation to the involuntary stimuli. We can untrain ourselves and change our patterns by just exerting ourselves, making mujahada. So if a pattern becomes destabilized, like you have an argument with your wife or an argument at work with a colleague, your pattern becomes destabilized. If we don't learn mechanisms to stabilize it, then what happens is the pattern can stay destabilized for a long time. Now all of a sudden somebody looks at you on the road or you say, hey, what you looking at? Why? Because it's that same instability that's still affecting your perception. So it's important for us to learn these mechanisms. Now, we have to start to appreciate the deen, this way of life that we've been given. Because when we look at all these things that the Sunnah is giving us, it's all the means and the tools that we need to maintain this chemical and electrical balance in our bodies. And so we're going to look at just a simple thing. This is a hadith. SubhanAllah, I shouldn't say simple, this is profound, but a short hadith. That the Prophet ﷺ says, as-sabr inda sadmatil ula. That patience is at the first stroke of a calamity, and then we will just leave it there. Okay? But if we understand that arousal is 1 to 3 seconds, and if at that first stroke we cut it out, it eliminates the need for attention, all of a sudden we maintain our health. And then this hadith, which I call simple, na'udhu billah, is a biological miracle. It's a biological treasure from the treasures of the Sunnah. And then, we always come back almost in every lecture to this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, because it's so relevant in our day-to-day dealings. إِيَّاكُمُ الظَّنِّ. Beware of suspicion, and suspicion is an arousal. فَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ, because it's the worst of false speech. Now, when you incline towards an arousal, what happens? You become inquisitive from the suspicion. And so the Prophet ﷺ, وَلَا تَحَسَّسُوا, don't be inquisitive. And when you're inquisitive, the next thing you want to spy, you saw somebody in town with somebody you don't know, all of a sudden you want to hide and check what they're up to. And so the Prophet ﷺ, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, don't spy. And if you see somebody now, you found that somebody has what I don't have. Now you want to compete with them. وَلَا تَنَافَسُوا. And if you don't have what they have, then you envy them. وَلَا تَحَسَدُوا. And if you can't get what they have, وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا. Now you want to hate them. And the Prophet ﷺ, don't hate them. And now you envy them and you dislike them because they have something that's better than you and you can't get it. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا. Now you cut off ties with them. And look at the end of it. وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. But you servants of Allah, be brothers. Meaning what? When you see somebody with something else, Alhamdulillah, that's my brother. He's got a good business, Alhamdulillah, he's going to pay more zakah. He's got something, Alhamdulillah, Allah blessed him. Ya Allah bless me with a similar thing. Just by practicing on the brotherhood, you neutralize all the negative chemistry in the body. And so what we have to understand is that conscious attention is only 5% of actually what's happening. 95% of what we do, we're doing it unconsciously. This is very important.
Conscious mind, your wish, your desire, what you want. Subconscious mind, your habit. New science, you operate 5% from the conscious mind, 95% from the program. Why is that relevant? How much of your life is coming from your wishes and desires? Virtually nothing. And all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I got to get out of this loop. And you might say, well, how do I get out of this? How do I know what my subconscious programming is all about? Because a lot of it was programmed even actually in the last trimester of pregnancy and the first 6 years of my life. I don't remember what my parents were saying to me when I was just born, when I was 1 year old, when I was 2 years old. I recorded it, but I don't know what they said. So I'm going to give you a simple, wonderful understanding. You don't have to go backwards to find out where your program is. You don't have to go back and kill the messengers and beat up on those people that did bad on you. Forget them. They're the messengers. You walked away with a message. What's the message? 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious, so your life is a printout of your subconscious programming. What works for you that you like works for you because you have programs to support that. But anything that you do when you go out in the world and you struggle and you work hard and you say, I'm struggling to get there. I said, why are you struggling? And the answer is simple. You have self-sabotaging, limiting, and disempowering beliefs that will not encourage that in your subconscious mind. So all of a sudden it says, do I need to go to a psychoanalysis for this? I say, absolutely not. You're living it. Just look at your life and see what's going on. What works for you works because it's supported by your belief. And what you have to work hard on and what you struggle for is your struggle is because it's not that program that's not supporting you. That's what it's all about.
Okay, so basically, I mean, when we look at what psychologists and neuropsychologists are saying, is that if we learn to handle a new challenge effectively and we learn to maintain stability, that becomes your new pattern. So just working on what you find is a problem can help you to change the way we behave and respond to things. So what do we need in beginning to control and change our patterns? We must become aware, first of all, of our facial expressions. Sometimes you're busy, face is tense, you don't realize that affects the neurology. It affects the way you respond to people. And, if you smile, it loosens the muscles in your face. You should do this as an exercise. The next time you got a difficult phone call to make and you have to have a serious conversation with someone, say A'udhu Billah, Bismillah, and then make sure you're smiling throughout the whole conversation. I can tell you, I've tried this many times. You will not believe the way it works. So we must become conscious. Sometimes in the way we're working, we forget that. But become conscious of our facial expressions. Because what we don't realize, our expressions formulate our own patterns and then the patterns of others. So if you're in a house and somebody knows he's looking like this or she's looking like that, they know, okay, the response should be something else. Okay, the children, spouse, everyone knows that. The next important thing is the tone of voice. Okay, if people are responding negatively towards you, check the tone of your voice. Because the tone of your voice affects your pattern and it affects the pattern of the person on the other side. Okay, and science has discovered now that even a laugh, the human brain is so sophisticated, it can detect a laugh of sarcasm and it can detect a laugh out of humor. Okay? This is how sensitive the brain is. So the tone of voice is a powerful tool to help you to generate positivity or negativity. The next important thing is become conscious of your breathing. Because when we become excited, we stop breathing. And then that raises your heart rate and then your level of anxiety. So when we become conscious of all of these things, then we start becoming aware of our patterns. And this reality, this strategy should be employed in all our relationships, husband and wife, employer-employee, maid and madam, parent and child, teacher and student, friends, and even with strangers, whether you're on the road or in the masjid or wherever. Employ this and you will see the difference. We must become aware of our patterns because they're the keys to happiness and they affect the patterns of those around us and the responses of those around us.
Kids start off at the lowest level and then over time ramp up to a higher level and then to a higher level. The first year or so of a child's life, it's in delta, the lowest vibration. Partially because it spends most of its time sleeping. But also because a child at this age has a nervous system that can take information in, but doesn't have a nervous system that can coordinate a response out. So infants can hear and understand everything you're talking about, but guess what? They have no motor coordination to express themselves, to respond to you, and that's why they're so frustrated. That's why they cry a lot. They were thinking, if I could just tell you what I'm thinking. But they can't. But the next important part is from first year up, and especially through about age 7, a child's brain is predominantly in theta. Theta is associated with imagination. Yeah, sure. That's why kids between 2 and 7 can mix the imaginary world and the real world together because they're operating at that vibrational level of imagination. But it's something more important. But I'll come back to that in a second. By the time the child reaches 7 and starts getting older, it ramps up to the next level, alpha, consciousness. It is now expressing calm consciousness. And then around 12 years of age, it ramps up to the next higher level, beta, which is schoolroom focus consciousness. This is why education changes before 12 and after 12. A child before 12 cannot do that focus consciousness that a child after 12 can do. And I said, yeah, but okay, now what's interesting about this? If you haven't seen it, I really want you to look at it real carefully. Why? Consciousness is alpha. Oh yeah? Then when did consciousness begin? After 6. Then what happened before 6? It's called the programmable state for a very simple reason. Very simple reason. Theta is hypnosis. For the first 6 years of your life, everything you observe is directly downloaded into the subconscious as programs. It doesn't go through consciousness. It's not filtered by belief. It's strictly recorded exactly as seen. This is not an accident. Nature didn't do this to punish you. Nature did this to help you. Why? Well, it can only give you so much information through genetics. The rest of it you have to learn. Yeah, but how can you learn if your conscious mind's thinking you're a kid and you're a parent trying to tell the kid, here's 1,000 rules you need to learn today about being a part of society. A kid after first rule says, why? Why? And all of a sudden you realize you're never going to get to rule 2. So nature eliminates the problem. Nature says, good. You don't have to have the child worry about it. Everything you say is going to be downloaded, and it becomes a program. So a child observes its mother, its father, its family, its community, its culture, and observes them. The observations go straight down into the subconscious and become behavioral programs. And all of a sudden you start to say, oh my God, this is where we get enculturated. How do I live in a culture? How do I know how to speak to a policeman separate than a kid? Because I saw my father talk to a policeman totally different than when he talked to a kid. And I started to see how my father's behaviors were. And the consequence was I downloaded my father's behavior. And all of a sudden I have these in my subconscious mind.
So, before we get to Rumi's quote, what we have to learn is that often our children, the people around us, are carrying our patterns with them. They do an experiment where they put a parent with the child, and then they let someone enter into the room. And in the first case, the parent will greet that person with respect. Then they ask the parent to leave the room, and that same person comes in, and then the child speaks to that person with respect. Then they take a second person to enter in the room, and the parent addresses that person with a bit of disrespect. And then the parent leaves, and then when that person comes in, they find that that child addresses that adult in the exact same way that the parent had addressed. And remember from our lessons on Ihsan, that the Prophet ﷺ, when they said, the signs of the hour, he said, أَنْتَلِدَ الْأَمَةُ رَبَّتَهَا, when a woman gives birth to her master. And we said one of the things is that parents will not teach their children Ihsan, and then they will find that they're not treated with Ihsan. So we should become, as the Rumi says, let the beauty of what you love be what you do. If we're finding negativity coming, it could be us that are the generators of that negativity. So every thought we entertain, every word we utter, every action we do, all place we visit, and the company we keep, has consequences for our patterns and those around us. And we're just going to end with one hadith and one Quranic ayah. The Prophet ﷺ says, Al-Kayyisu man dana nafsahu. The intelligent person is the one who controls his nafs. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. And then he works for what comes after death. And what we're learning now is that when you work for things that come after death, it actually benefits you here. Okay? وَالْعَاجِزُ, and the fool or the idiot, مَنْ أَتْبَعَ نَفْسَهُ هَوَاهُ, is the one that follows his nafs. ثُمَّ تَمَنَّ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Then he says, I put my trust in Allah. You know, he doesn't do what Allah wants him to do. And then as the last minute resort, he wants to put his trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we need a pattern to follow, a belief to subscribe to, and then meditation diet to keep us balanced. And do we have this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have in the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam the pattern of Ihsan. For who? لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُ اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. For the ones who have hope in Allah and the last day. They believe in Allah in the last day. And then how do they maintain their balance? وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. They remember Allah often, meaning in every situation, what is Ihsan. And we'll just end with this. The Rumi says the only lasting beauty is the beauty of the heart. And this is what we should aspire to. Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu.